Hey everyone, welcome to InterviewPro. In the last video, we have seen how to bind a model to the template-driven form. In this video, let's see how Angular tracks the state of the form. Angular provides a few classes to track the state of the form and check its validity. Let's see what these classes are. Let's go back to the code. Let me add a template reference variable to this name input. So this is a username. I'll call it just UN. And template reference variables are followed by a hash. Let's see what this variable has. Let me display it over here. Go back to UI. We see this is a HTML input element. Let's try to do the same for age group as well. So age group, and let's display it below this. Now, if we look at this, this is a HTML select element. So what template reference variable does is it holds a reference to the HTML element to which it is binded. This variable has a property called class name. Let's see what it does. So I'll simply say un.className. I'll do the same for age group as well. Let's go back to the UI. We see form control. This is nothing but the class that I have added to all the elements in our form. And along with this classes that I have added, there are three other classes. So what are these? ng untouched. This class tells us whether this control is visited or not. Let me put my cursor on this input, then move out to other control. Then come back. Now the class is changed to ng touched. It was previously untouched. So what it tells is if the control is already visited or not. If it's visited, then it would be ng touched. Otherwise, it's ng untouched. There is another class ng pristine. This class tells us whether the control's value is changed or not. For example, let's take this name and update this value. If I come out, see ng pristine is now ng dirty. So ng pristine means the form value has not been changed. Ng dirty is the form value has been updated. Then we have ng valid. Let me add some validation to this field. Let's go back to the code. Let's say the minimum length of the name is 10 characters. Now let's go back. So now we have more than 10 characters, so this is valid. But let me remove some text here. The moment I made the length of the name less than 10 characters, ng valid class is updated to ng invalid because the minimum number of characters it needs to have is 10. So as soon as I made it 10 characters, then it became ng valid. Not just min length, it can be any validation. It can be a required field or it can be a max length or any kind of validation. So let's take a use case. We don't want to submit this form without name and feedback. They are required fields. So let's add required validation to name and feedback. Let me add required keyword to this name input and also to the feedback text area. I'll say required. Now we can disable this button to avoid the submission of the form when name and feedback are not provided, or when we click on it, we may stop calling the method. You can do anything. So in order to do that, we have to do one more thing. To this template reference variable, we need to bind ng model. Then we can have access to these classes as properties. If the class has ng-touched, then un.un is username in our case. Dot touched property would give us true. If it's untouched, then untouched would give true, touched would give us false. If it's pristine, the dot pristine property would give us true. Otherwise, We can use dirty, which would give us true if the form value is updated, otherwise it returns false. Same with the valid and invalid properties as well. So we have binded ng model to un, and let's do the same thing to text area, which is feedback. So I'll create a template reference variable which says feedback, or I'll just put it fb equals ng model. Now we can make use of these template variables to directly access those properties. So instead of class name, I'll say, let's say un.valid. Let's go back to the UI. Now we see it's true because the length is more than 10. Now if I remove this characters, it's not valid because the min length is 10 and we have just 5 characters here. un.valid is false. So now we can disable this button based on FB and UN values. I'll leave this up to you to disable this button. We have already seen how to disable the button in our previous videos. You can go through them. What I would like to implement here is I'll just add a condition here to call the method on submit only when name and feedback are available. Otherwise, I'll prevent calling this method. So how do I do that? I'll simply say un.valid and fb.valid. Only then call this method. Let me open console, clear everything. Now, if I try to submit, I don't see any logs. So what happens when I click on submit is on feedback submit method will be called and these logs will be seen in the console. But now we have added this condition, we don't see the logs because we have name but not feedback. So let me enter some feedback. This is awesome tutorial and click on submit. Now we see the console log. So this is how you keep track of the state of a template driven form. And you can use these properties by binding these template reference variables to ng model. I hope the concept is clear. If you like the content, please like, share and subscribe to InterviewPro. Thank you.